Hi, I'm Mark from SpeedCurve.
Steve Souders. I'm at SpeedCurve too.
Awesome. So, performance, design, we're here. We're kind of bringing it together. And our focus is really on users. And I know that sounds quite simplistic, but it kind of is. That's our vision, to create better user experiences. And how do we do that? By bringing design and performance together.
Yeah, I think that's important. It does seem funny to have to talk about what is it that we really care about when we build websites, but it is all about the user. And what I really like that's like a unifying theme that can bring all parts of the team together, because when it really gets down to it, hopefully that's what everyone is after, is building a really compelling user experience. But you have a stronger design background than I do, but certainly I think we would all agree, and the HTTP archive shows that sites are getting heavier and heavier, richer and richer, so it's great to have all that awesome content, but it does present performance challenges. And maybe up until now, people have kind of viewed that as a fixed-sum game. You can have one or the other, a lot of rich content or a fast website. And in our experience, I think we've both had successful engagements where we've been able to deliver both of those. But it can be hard, and I'm really excited about being at SpeedCurve because, as far as I know, it's the only company that's really trying to focus on this optimization, this integration of thinking about design and performance and really producing the best user experiences possible.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, without getting too abstract, I think what we're trying to do is come up with not just a tool, but actually a process that helps guide the team and various team members, like front-end developers and back-end developers and designers and marketing people, get together around a set of principles that are then expressed in the software. So we're just as interested in how you actually go about understanding the performance of your users and designing and building for those users, as much as widgets and dashboards and hacking great stuff together. So it's both of those sides of the equation that is what SpeedCurve is all about.
I think that's really interesting, those things that you just touched on. It kind of shows our different backgrounds. Certainly, performance and development, but you've had an extensive history doing design, running a design agency and teaching. And so some of those things that you just talked about so casually, about understanding users and engaging with marketing, for me, as where my background is all in development, those things actually sound kind of foreign to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like what you're saying. I think that is something important for us to bring to our customers, to people building websites out there.
Yeah.
And certainly for me, like, what I really want to bring is some of those development best practices that I'm most familiar with. And we talked about this the other day on our walk along the Kiwi coast about how it's a two-way conversation, right? Developers can help by helping designers understand more about the development process. And then we talked about how designers can help developers. And you talked about this. You talked about the way that we communicate about the website and the users and the goals and how we're trying to engage. I haven't really had a great appreciation for that until we talked about that the other day. I think that's important.
Well, and I think that goes both ways, right? It's very easy to critique design teams and marketing teams as not really thinking through how something's actually going to get built and what's that's going to feel like in the final experience in a web browser. So actually joining those threads together and having a set of principles that move through the whole development of a project is something that SpeedCurve is setting out to support. So the idea of something like a performance budget, where right at the beginning you sit down with the entire team, developers and marketing people, and go, what is this thing going to feel like? How should it work? How are we going to measure that and make sure that we hit those goals all the way through the design life cycle as well as the development life cycle?
And as you're saying these things, I'm grinning because I know what SpeedCurve does. I know more about what it does now that I've been on board for about a week and helping develop. And I think about the features that we have in our dashboards that really hit on that, on trying to help people visualize and quantify what that end user experience is really about and how good it is, or maybe how bad it is. But the other thing I like about what you just said is this meme that we've been talking about, and in fact we have it on the front page of the website, design plus performance.
Design plus performance. Who's who?
And it really makes me think back on the early Velocity days where, back in 2008, 2009, the DevOps concept of lowering the wall between developers and sysadmins, maybe back then they were called, or SREs, system reliability engineers today. Lowering that wall, getting more skill sharing across those groups, more understanding, communication. And that, of course, has gone a long way. DevOps, everyone's talking DevOps these days, certainly a big theme at Velocity. And I think this design plus performance, I don't know if that's what we'll finally end up calling it. I was thinking D4P, design for performance, right?
Maybe.
But I think it's going to have a life like that. I think,
and there's a challenge there, right, as well. Like when you talk to DevOps people and you go, "Hey, what about design? What about marketing? What about all those other people in that flow?" They go, "Oh, but we're only just getting on top of DevOps. Like we can't add more things to that stack." So it's really interesting how you think about all those horizontal silos. Like what is the process for communicating and bringing those things together? You need a set of tools, I think, that helps do that, as well as really great internal process and communication.
With the D4P, I think what I'm thinking about there is Laura Hogan's Designing for Performance book. And maybe I should roll back just a little bit. There was this design plus performance thing. I think, like I said, I think it's going to be a big thing. I think that's what people want. They want rich websites that are fast,
great experiences,
a great user experience. And I co-chair Velocity. Velocity, we're in our 8th or 9th year, and a lot of great things have come out of that. I think Velocity had a big part in DevOps getting big, and so I'm kind of excited. The first time I really started thinking about this was Velocity New York 2013, and we had two people who are big in this space now and were back then, Jason Grigsby and Tim Kadlik. And I think Laura was there too, but I'm not sure if she was in the conversation. I remember talking with Tim and Jason about how important it was going to be for the future of performance to start getting more engaged with designers. And we were talking about how to increase that intersection between these groups, kind of like we've done at Velocity with Dev and Ops. Oh, okay, that might be too close, too much overlap. But, and we talked about, well, how can we get more designers to come to Velocity? Maybe us Velocity speakers should try to go to more design conferences. But we certainly recognized that this was going to be something that was important for, not just for evangelizing performance more broadly, but for doing what we all really want to do, the real end goal, creating better websites and more engaging websites. And so that was, a year and a half ago, and really there's been tremendous progress. And it's not like we scoped this out or came up with a plan or anything like that. I think it's just been constant thinking about it, and these folks like Laura and you and Jason and Tim talking about it. And so we have Laura Hogan's book, Designing for Performance. That's where
Yeah.
I get the D for P thing.
Great.
And Tim Cadlick has done a lot of work on performance budgets, which actually doesn't have the word design in it,
Yeah.
but it's a big part of design because a budget in terms of speed and size and number of scripts is going to affect what you do, is going to affect the design. That's going to be a yin and yang thing where they interact with each other. Yesenia Perez Cruz has a great talk. We're trying to get her to come to Velocity, but she talks about design and performance. And you've spoken at the last 3 Velocities about design and performance, and part of it is the processes, but also bringing maybe more of a design flavor
Yeah.
to performance dashboards. But it's really a lot of it is about that process part.
Yeah. And I think before we get into process, the thing to really, I think, acknowledge and talk about is actually the respective, I don't know if ethos is the right word, but when you think about engineering culture, it's about optimizing. It's about reducing time. And you told me a great story the other day about when you were younger, and you've got this optimization focus, and so when you started making your sandwiches in the mornings, you were like, what? I have to get up every morning and make the same sandwich? That's it. I'm just going peanut butter. I'm going to make 7 of them. I'm going to put them in the freezer, and I'm just going to get one out each day. Like, that's the optimization is in your blood, right? And that's that engineering ethos.
I just want to clarify, that was when I was in 4th grade. That wasn't last week. That was when I was young, although I still care about optimization. But.
So when I come to your house, you're just going to get out frozen peanut butter sandwiches for me? But design almost comes from the opposite ethos, right? Which is, it's about creativity. We're trying to jam the richest possible experience at you as we can. Big, high-res images, lots of fonts. Like, we want this rich, beautiful thing that helps us communicate.
Very unique.
And so I think,
yeah.
and performance budgets live in the middle of that because it's a negotiation. And I think that's the really important thing to understand, is that we've got to negotiate all these things. We've got to bring these different areas together, and it's got to start with that initial conversation. So when you're getting into, and this is where I don't like calling it a design process, because when I say design, I mean all of it, right? It's like design is this bubble that lives, above the meta kind of process. It's above both of us, because it's not something that the marketing team goes away and does in isolation. So when I'm thinking about a design process, I'm thinking about how do I get developers in the room, marketing people, all of the various areas represented, and we duke it out. We have a negotiation about what this experience is supposed to feel like, how fast it is. Am I sitting on a bus and I've got 30 seconds? Have I got 3 hours to investigate a whole lot of interesting content and watch videos? Like, what are we actually trying to get people to do, and what should that feel like? And a really important part of what it feels like is, how fast is it? It's nothing worse than spending seconds and seconds waiting for a web page to load. I'm bored. Wonder if my peanut butter sandwich is defrosted yet. Oh, that's it. I'm out of here.
And I think that like you can try, like SpeakCurve has great dashboards. You could try and probably have a good deal of success getting people across the organization, across the process, looking at more dashboards. But that's one of the things I like about the process as you describe it is, and something I really like specific deliverables or artifacts or mechanisms that we can talk about that promotes that. And so, a dashboard is one, but you might have a hard time getting a lot of engagement around a dashboard. But the performance budget and the conversation around that, I think, is a great vehicle to move this design plus performance meme forward.
Yeah.
Like, it really, like you said, you said duke it out. Hopefully it's not always like that, but it's getting all the people in a room and having that conversation together.
And when you do that is really critical, because when a project is halfway through development and the marketing team have already fallen in love with a particular creative concept, and the developers are going, oh, here it is, another big huge Photoshop file, what am I going to do with it? It's never going to work. It's too late. So timing is really important. We're at the beginning of a project when everyone's optimistic, everyone's, hey, this is going to be amazing. We're all there. We're all talking about the things that are really important to us. I'm a designer. I want it to look beautiful. I'm a user experience researcher. It's like I want it to connect and fulfill that task and that goal that that person has. I'm a developer. I want it to work and be really well optimized. Everyone there is talking about the important principles behind what that user experience should feel like. And then the next thing is to agree those principles and translate those into those performance budgets, and then put them in some sort of tool that can give you that continuous feedback as you then get further and further into the decision making on a project. Because once you're way in, it's really hard to change, not necessarily the technology, but people's mindsets don't change once you're 3 months into a project. It's gone.
Yeah, and I think those guiding principles, those goals for what the team is trying to create, that is a precursor to the budget, but I think that's also very important. And I would bet 5 years ago, a lot of people weren't doing that. A lot of teams weren't doing that, kind of setting guiding principles for the app, the site that they're building. Or if they were, I bet performance wasn't in the list of goals. And so I think
that's right.
I think just doing this design plus performance thing and talking about simple things like, do you care about performance? If so, maybe it should be mentioned as part of one of the guiding principles or goals of what you're
part
building.
of the creative brief.
And then you can kind of put that into something, quantify that, put that into something that can be monitored with a performance budget.
And then that allows you to do all sorts of things. So in SpeedCurve, we've got some really interesting clients that when they set out on a new project, so say they've got an existing huge site and they're about to start a big redesign, they do things like branch that code. So they'll take what they've got in production, they'll switch it into a different branch, they'll put it on a different server, they'll
add that new server as another site in their SpeedCurve dashboard.
Yeah.
So now you're monitoring both.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you're monitoring kind of both. One's in production, one's in dev. And then they strip everything out. They delete all the components, they take all the ads off, all the third parties, and then they put those budgets in place. So that they're then going, okay, we're going to monitor all these different metrics and we're going to agree in the design process how many images and how big those images should be. And they set those thresholds. And then they're monitoring that development branch continuously. Every time they deploy, we do a round of testing. And once you hit one of those thresholds or it changes, more than a certain percentage each day, we send you alerts and we push them into email and Slack and wherever you want them, we'll kind of send them. And you get that feedback. And I think you can't design in a vacuum, you can't build in a vacuum. Like, it's literally just about giving you that great feedback so that you can build the best possible experience.
So we didn't rehearse this question. I'm going to put you on the spot, but hopefully the answer is a good one. So I know, this scenario that you just described, I know that it's, based on a true story. I know the customer who did this, fork, strip everything to the bare bones, start adding stuff back in, track our budget. But I don't think you told me what the outcome was. Now, hopefully the outcome was they were able to add things back in when they exceeded the budget. They were able to figure out how to rework that and get back to the same level of content, but faster. But I don't know. How did it actually turn out?
Well, so I think the way that stuff plays out is that if you have those principles agreed at the beginning, then you've got someone's buy-in, all right. It's like 2 months ago, we decided that it should be this sort of experience. So when you cross those thresholds, and I've heard this happen, someone will come and go, I've got this great new feature, the homepage has to do this. And then without actually really having to say anything, if you've got that feedback and you can see those dashboards, a developer doesn't necessarily have to be bad cop where they're like, oh no, we're over the threshold, you can't kind of, add something without taking something away. And that's where you're at. It's like, I can't add that feature without taking out, another feature. So you get into that land of compromise and trying to decide what's really important. Do we really need that carousel? Do we really need another widget? Do we really need all those ad retargeting, pixels on our site? But The thing that changes is that everyone's aware of that from those principles. So when you go, well, you remember that performance budget we agreed on? People go, oh, yeah, okay, so where are we at? Well, do we have to compromise yet? So people are open to those conversations. And I've heard really great feedback about how that works well for making that negotiation a lot more pleasant if you have that principle in place.
But what I was really trying to get at was how much is it the case that you can have your cake and eat it too? Like I feel like, and it's true for stuff I build too, that there's a lot of opportunity for improvement in how we build stuff. And maybe it's, you didn't think it through, you know, the code changed, the requirements changed. Maybe you kind of prototype something quick and that prototype, you know, turned out because of a lack of time to be the thing that rolled out to production and you didn't really scrutinize it from a performance perspective. In your experience, how much can you have your cake and eat it too? How much can you, when you look at these dashboards, at these budgets, and you see that you're over, I think it's kind of easy to say, well, the way we're going to get under the budget is just to take stuff out of the website.
Yeah.
How often in your experience is it that you can revisit things that are in the website and rework them with knowledge of the performance impact? Yeah. And so rework them from the perspective of let's improve performance and maintain the same level of richness or content or something very close that also matches the budget.
So I think generally people are lazy and they want as much cake as they can get as quickly as possible. So the thing about a budget is you can quite quickly get to that threshold, and that's where the thinking really begins about how do I then deliver this in a different way. And I've certainly done really rich, amazing projects in the past, and I've been really heavily criticised for doing things like delivering a 25 megabyte homepage. And people were like, what do you mean you can't deliver a 25 megabyte homepage? That's impossible. But if you look at the techniques under the hood, the initial JavaScript and the initial experience loaded in 300K, and then we did a huge amount of work in prototyping, you know, using Canvas and all that new amazing technology that we have in our modern browsers to stream that experience in. And if I said to you, hey, let's go and watch a YouTube video, and it's about 25 megs, you'd be like, wow, that's good, that's really well optimized. But then when we talk about a homepage, which is just a time-based experience that plays out as you scroll or you move through it, why does that have to be 100K? So we need to be careful not to get into a reductionist argument where the fastest possible website is a website with nothing on it.
That's what I was trying to say,
yeah. So there are amazing techniques out there. Our modern browsers are just amazing. We just need to do more. We need to be cleverer and smarter about how we deliver those really rich experiences. So it's not punitive. It's you know, let's find a way to deliver those while meeting that budget and thinking about how that experience plays out.
And you know, we've both done enough development that it's kind of fun and easy to talk about these things, and we've lived through it to a certain degree. But it is really hard, and you know, everyone loves mobile, but mobile tablet has made things just so much harder. I mean, really in my heart, I have empathy for people trying to build these awesome experiences out there. And so I'm glad that, I mean, it's still a lot of work, but I'm glad that we can help them at least see how good or bad things are and maybe hone in on the things that they need to focus on.
And I think the challenge there is as early as possible. And so that streaming experience I was talking about, that massive homepage, we went through something like 30, 35 different prototypes before we settled on a technique that was actually going to work. So I can't stress enough the value of prototyping from day one. And I'm literally meaning, you know, no Photoshop files, no static mock-ups. You're pushing code from day one. And the whole team is pushing code. Designers, developers, everybody's in there contributing everything, you know, all their specific skill sets to a shared prototype. And that is monitored from day one. So you get that feedback all the time of like, how are we doing? I tried out this new concept. Are we over a budget? You know, is it going to work? And the only way to do that is to rapidly iterate prototype after prototype and be really open to where is that technology going to take us and how might we solve it? So there's a lot of sort of trust and openness and like scariness around those agile processes. But that's usually where you find the really amazing results, is in taking that leap of faith and what can this technology now do for us.
I think a big thing is just having that visibility. You know, Don Knuth is famous for his early optimization is the root of all evil, and there's definitely truth to that. But you know, I believe in this. I believe in you know, early prototyping, early monitoring of performance. But I'll be honest, you know, even as someone who cares a lot about performance, I will prototype something that I know is slow and not the right way to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm prototyping, and I'll keep that in mind, and maybe I'll even tell people that I'm showing the prototype to, like, this hasn't been optimized at all.
Sure.
You know, I know how to make it faster, but, you know, first what I want to do is kind of get feedback on the concept before I invest. And so I think that's kind of what the, you know, root of all evil, early optimization is, premature optimization is you want to invest that time in optimizing when it's appropriate and not unnecessarily.
Yeah.
And so I think getting this, you know, early tracking
Yeah.
is a way to do that. Is
Totally.
to have the visibility.
And I think also being conscious about what is it that you're prototyping. Are you prototyping a particular development technique? Are you prototyping a piece of communication? So actually being quite conscious about what are the big, scary questions that we have at the beginning of a project, and actually prototyping those. So I think most people still have a mindset of, I'm going to do the homepage, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to walk through the site structure. Whereas, you know, the projects that I've seen go really well is when you actually start with the hardest problem. And that problem might be about the content and the editorial process. Do we even have, you know, big, beautiful content to work with? Let's prototype that editorial process and see what comes down the pipe. You know, so really thinking hard about what you're prototyping and how you're prototyping it to get that feedback as quickly as possible.
Before we turn the camera off, I wanted to do one more thing. I think now's a good time to talk about it. Is I was talking about Velocity and getting, you know, more attention on design at Velocity, and we have, you know, some great speakers who are doing that. But as I mentioned, you know, you've spoken at the last 3 Velocities, and I would say, I think everyone would agree that across the speaker set at Velocity, you're probably one of the people with the strongest design background, right? You have a lot of experience doing that. And I think that as we're doing here, you know, as part of this, you know, kind of
Design meets perf.
Design meets perf ongoing babble that we're doing, I think that telling more, exposing more about the world of design to the Velocity audience, where I think we, unlike other conferences, I think we don't have a strong designer population represented in the Velocity audience. And I think, you know, that's something that I want, you know, the reason behind you being invited to speak at Velocity in the past, and I hope you'll keep doing going forward, is exposing to the Velocity audience more about how design works, what those processes are like, and how we can get this design plus perf overlap to happen more. And so I just wondered if you could talk any more about is to just do that. Like, can you think of other things about the design process, the design vocabulary, the design flow that you think is important for people who are more in the dev performance camp to appreciate in this design plus performance theme?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing you can do, and it's a very simple thing to do, is get involved. Get involved, I think, is the big kind of, you know, thing that I would focus on. Far too many times I see developers quite comfortable taking a back seat, going, oh, those creatives are going to run off and they're going to do their thing over there, and at some point it's going to get thrown over to the fence to me, and they accept that as their lot in life. that stuff's always going to get thrown over the fence. So what
I'm not a designer, so I don't want to weigh in. I'm not, this is the developer thinking, okay, well, we have to decide what this experience is going to be like. Oh, well, I'm not an experienced UX person. I'm a developer, and so I'm going to step back and I'll wait for you guys to decide
That's right.
what we're going to do.
My opinion isn't valid.
Yeah.
So the thing I would encourage everyone to do is go, you're a user, you use these things day in and day out, you have an opinion, and your opinion is valid, and it's really well informed from the context that you're coming from. And I love that idea of, the T-shaped person. It's like, yes, you have a specialization and you know a lot of deep information about this area, but part of your role in being able to interact with other people is to have that T at the top of the bar as well, right? And understand the relationships with the other areas around you. And so the moment you get involved and you don't accept a given outcome just dumped on your kind of plate, that's when things improve. And I've had wonderful experiences where inviting. So I'm a creative director, right? And I'm the one standing in front of the client pitching the idea. When you invite a developer to go and pitch the idea to a client, they're like, well, hang on, how do I do that? Like, kind of, what's going on? So actually getting involved and feeling that sense of ownership, I think is the best possible thing that you can do to feel like you're crafting that user experience just as much as anyone else, because you are. You can't separate design and technology. It doesn't work if we're like back here and whoo, I'm just going to throw it over the fence.
And it's a two-way street. I mean, just a minute ago we talked about developers maybe stepping away and not being involved, saying, "I'm just a developer." We're trying to define what the user experience is going to be like. Let me know when you're done, and I'll take a whack at it. But I think it works the other way too. I've seen it the other way too, where developers start talking about how they're going to approach implementation or the challenges with doing an implementation of a design, and the designer can sometimes step back and say, well, I'm just a designer. I don't know if you're going to use SVG or WebP. I don't know about that stuff. And so again, like this design plus performance it's really a two-way street. It's understanding and skill sharing in both directions. And I think that around your team, around your organization, if you hear people adopting that kind of I'm just a developer, I'm just a designer stance, I think that's a red flag. And I think that's a good time to go back to the thing we talked about just a little while ago, is to go back to that unifying theme that everyone is building, is working to create great user experiences. Okay, if we start there, can you sit in and participate in the design process, and can you understand more about the development process?
And it doesn't take much. Usually all you need to do is pause that conversation in that moment and invite someone's response. If there's a developer in the room and they've been listening in, just making sure that you're actually inviting responses from different people and you're getting them to contribute. Because I bet you those developers are all sitting there with a whole lot of things in their head thinking about that user experience and what it's going to be like. And oppositely the other way around, like I have a design background, but I've spent a lot of time doing development. And I love calling, bullshit when developers try and sell me a fast one because they think I'm just a designer, that all I do is push pixels around. So, everyone has opinions, and if you invite them, that's when you really lift the quality of a project.
It's really interesting. I really enjoy hearing you talk about this. I think, and like I said, I think there's a lot here.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot
that
can be done to
design
improve websites and improve how teams work and interact. And I think you've done a big part of placing SpeedCurve right in the middle of that. It's cool.
It's very cool. It's been a huge amount of fun, and amazing to have you on board, Steve.
Yeah, and that's why I'm here. I think it's a big thing.
Let's do it. And I kind of invite Steve and all of you to participate in that SpeedCurve conversation and a tool. And I think for me, it's a really important thing to think about and recognise is that yes, this is a tool, but what we're trying to invite you to do is participate in this conversation about design and perf, and let's just make better user experiences. That's all we're trying to do. So, and we'll try and show you how. So yeah,
D for
design
P.
perf. So who's design? Who's performance?
We both are.